All right, good afternoon again, everybody. Welcome to the Wildfire Preparedness event. I'll ask those that want to, please take your seat. We still have a few more people trickling in, so we'll be a little bit patient. I've got a little housekeeping items to cover first before we get into the presentation. So I'll go ahead and do that. My name's Lisa Bachman, and I was brought on by the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments to help put this event together tonight, this information event together. So it is sponsored by the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments in cooperation with Air Force Academy, Woodmen Valley Fire Protection District, Colorado Springs Fire Department and Wildfire Mitigation, the El Paso County Sheriff's Fire Department, and numerous other organizations that have information booths. If you did not make it over to the cafeteria out around the lobby, please do so. There's a lot of information booths there. They'll continue to stay open after our presentation tonight. So we encourage you to please visit those. There's a lot of freebies, so pick up freebies and take them home. There's some snacks over there too, so help yourself. So just a couple things that I want to mention before we get started. First of all, I don't want it to go unnoted that this is the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Very important in our history, so I don't see anyone here that might have served during D-Day, but maybe your family member did. So we salute you who are part of the greatest generation and served during the Great War. So thank you. I also want to introduce our elected officials that we have here tonight. So Dave, you're chewing. Okay, so I'll go slow. Dave Donaldson is our District 1 City Council member who represents this district. So, do you want to say something?
Thank you for that, and I just do want to say something about the 80th anniversary of D-Day. My wife Holly is sitting right there, and her father, Joe Pipp, landed on Utah Beach on June 6, 1944. As a lieutenant in the Army as an engineer, like first wave, really, and then fought in the Battle of the Bulge, fought in the Hurtgen Forest, fought with 4th ID all the way through the war. And we were there for the 75th anniversary, and we're on the beaches, and that's, President Trump came and spoke at the cemetery that year. So it really is a special, a significant day for America and for our country and for those who served. And a lot of us have a family member back a few generations, 1 or 2, that was in that. This morning I was out at Fort Carson they had the 80th anniversary ceremony out there. That was well done. And so the reason I just got here a couple minutes ago, I was at the City State of the Utilities presentation. So we just did that down by Academy in Austin Bluffs, that area where that was. So it's a privilege for me to represent you on City Council. I really thought about going into elected office when I was in Normandy, when we were there for the 75th anniversary on those beaches, and I thought about, would these guys who died here look at our country and be proud? Are we something that they would say, I died willingly for? Are we still doing what's right for them? And I thought I should be part of this, and I should help out. So again, it's an honor to represent you. I'll be here, and I'm happy to answer questions on other topics too. These experts kind of have this one covered. So thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. I did not see him arrive yet, but Commissioner Stan Vanderwerf, who is our county commissioner for this district, had indicated he'd be here, so he may join in a little bit. And then I don't know if we still have Dennis Heisey here. I don't see him. He might be in the other room, but Dennis Heisey was here. He represents Congressman Doug Lamborn's office, so we appreciate him being here as well. So, all right. A few other quick housekeeping. We should be able to see everything okay up here. I will say this is an old school. There's one switch that turns all the lights off. So we didn't want to put you all in the dark, but I think you'll be okay and be able to see it. So tonight is a collaboration of all these organizations that I mentioned, who work day in and day out really to help keep all of us safe. So we really appreciate all of them. You know, it used to be in years past that we had a wildfire season here in our area. Now wildfire season is 365 days out of the year. And so they're on call and working 24/7, 365. But the key takeaway that we hope you leave tonight with is that we're all in this together. You know, we're working as organizations, we're working as the public to help mitigate, to help plan, prepare, understand what our roles and responsibilities are in the potential of a fire. I know what these fires are like. I had a brother and sister lost their homes in the Black Forest fire. So this is serious stuff, and we all take it seriously. That said, this event is not like the other one you might have been to. There was one recently by the Colorado Springs Fire Department. This one is put on by Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments, more focused on the Woodmen Valley, Thunderbird area, some of the homes up along Peregrine. We felt that it was important to have you all here because you might have some very specific questions related to the boundary with the Air Force Academy. And so they're here tonight in force, and we appreciate that. Also, the fact that PPACG is the sponsor of this one versus the one that was held by the fire department. And I do want to point out, Paul, if you would raise your hand, and Andrew Gunning, if you would raise your hand, and I think Ann is out at the front desk, but those three are with PPACG, and they're the ones that organized the joint land use study back a few years ago. Joint land use study was with the 5 military installations in our region and the communities that are close by to how we should work together, collaborate together between military and our communities. So this event here tonight is also the implementation phase of that joint land use study. So that's what's different about this. And then the third thing that's different is that this event is also serving as a public meeting to get your input for what's called a community Wildfire Protection Plan. There's so many acronyms. CWPP. And Kevin Bush with the Woodmen Valley Fire Protection District is going to go in a little more detail with that. The Colorado Springs Fire Department already has one in place, and Jess McIntyre will be talking about that tonight and what that involves. The reason those are important is because it helps the organizations get funding. They're able to pursue grants. If you don't have a CWPP in place, sometimes you just are not eligible to pursue those grants, and those grants can be used for wildfire mitigation around your property. So really important. So we do encourage you visit the CWPP table in the cafeteria afterward, and please talk to those folks there because they want to get your input because that goes into that CWPP plan. So, all right, we're going to go to the agenda next. So first we will have Kevin Bush with the Woodmen Valley Fire Protection District, then Jessica from the Colorado Springs Fire Department. Then we have 3 speakers from the Air Force Academy. Colonel Glisson is commander of the 10th Air Base Wing. The forester is Joe Murphy, and Ron Prettyman is the fire chief at the Academy. So we've got a really good lineup here of speakers. And then bringing it home is the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, Commander Chris Gonzalez. And then what we'll do is we'll go into Q&A at the end. So with that, I'm going to introduce Kevin Bush with the Woodmen Valley Fire Protection District. And I'll mention in between speakers, I was not able to pull all the slides in one seamless PowerPoint because it messed them all up. So I'm going to have to do a little 10-second break in between each speaker. So I just want you to know that. Kevin.
Well, it's interesting for us to be back here because our daughters were in the 2nd year of this school being in place. So Lisa, I'd appreciate it if you quit calling this an old school. So I'm Kevin Bush. I joined the Fire Department 36 sense, have been successful at it. If you don't know what Woodmen Valley Fire Protection District is, Woodmen Valley we're actually an unincorporated part, so we're not actually part of the city, that's made up of 4 neighborhoods, which are Woodmen Valley, Cedar Valley Lane, the Pine Creek Estates, and Thunderbird Estates. And that's made up of the pink areas. We're bounded by the Peregrine neighborhood, the Woodstone and Rockrimmon neighborhood, and I-25 and U.S. Air Force Academy. So, of course, we're all, like all of you, very dependent on each other. We're a little more heavily wooded than many of you and have larger lots, so mitigation is even more important to us. Oh, and if you're not in one of these pink areas, you can just ignore everything else I say. Did it go or not? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we were actually, our neighborhoods go back to 1954 and even earlier, but we formed a fire department in 1959, a little ahead of my time, but not a whole lot. And then we've had a volunteer fire department that entire time. But over time, it just got harder and harder for us to actually get volunteers. The neighborhood changed. What is wrong with this mic? So we are finally getting to where we had to go as far as security or wide field to get new volunteers, which led to a whole lot of problems, as you might guess, because our response time started getting up into the 22-minute range. So realizing where we were going with that, we finally actually worked a contract with Colorado Springs Fire. They were gracious enough to help us with this. And so they now provide all of our fire services. And we are actually a pretty small crew now, but I do want to point out that there's Justin, Lucinda might be in the other room, and Eric is here. There's Eric back there. If you have any questions, come by and ask us about the district. Okay. Next slide, please. So right now, we just recently signed the agreement and extended it for another 20 years with Colorado Springs Fire. And that means Colorado Springs Fire provides our fire services and a lot of our emergency medical services too. A point I'd like to point out is that we actually have equal status with city residents in terms of service. So it's not like they get around to us when they feel like it. They're actually offering us the same level of service that they offer their own residents. And they cover all of the homes in the Woodmen Valley areas. And the nice thing is we got 3 different departments that are all within 5 miles of those homes. As far as the funding, it's being funded by the tax money that you're already paying to the district. So it didn't lead to any increases in funds for us. We are taxed and we do pay taxes because something like this isn't cheap. But I think in exchange, what we're getting is a fantastic deal for us. And I will say that that some people have been concerned about this. There is no implication that we would have to do annexation in the future or anything like that under this agreement. And it also doesn't imply that we get any other services. So for police, we don't have the city police. We instead depend on the sheriff's office, and any other services that might come with the city still we don't receive. Okay, but this has been a fantastic agreement. If we can go to the next one. We have 24/7 coverage. I mentioned we have 3 stations nearby. They have a very large resource pool that if we ever needed hazmat or wildland fire services or a ladder truck, things that we never could have afforded, they have all those available and can provide those as needed. I think that everyone I've met from Colorado Springs Fire is absolutely outstanding people. And so I think it's one of the best fire departments in the country. So I'm really pleased that we get to benefit from all their hard work. And I will say that every time one of their trucks comes out, I think almost every one of them has a paramedic on it, which, given that some of us are getting older in the neighborhoods, is kind of an important thing to know. They also been nice to us to provide their fire mitigation services. So they'll come out, do an on-site eval for you. They'll, of course, give us that slash program that we all love where we get the free chipping. That's all being provided by them. And Jessica will be explaining that more later, but I just want everyone to remember, record how many hours you spend on mitigation and let them know, because they're using that to get grants in order to fund that service. And we're going to want that service next year and the year that follows and the year that follows. Okay, so moving on. What I really wanted to talk about was the Community Wildfire Protection Plan that Lisa had already mentioned, and that it's a plan that kind of lays out what are the characteristics of our neighborhood, what is the characteristics of the foliage and things like that in the area, along with how would we deal with a wildfire in the area, what can we do to prevent wildfires, and what do we do if we have to get out quickly. And so we're putting this plan together. This, I will say that it is not, it's going to make recommendations, but it doesn't put any onus on you to do anything. It's up to you whether you decide to do any of these things. These are just recommendations. It's important to the fire district because we can use it to get other funding down the road. But I think it's important for all of us to understand what we're dealing with and how we can reduce our risk of fire in the future. So if we can move forward, we've got 2 contractors who are helping us do this. They're being funded by the grant that the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments actually obtained for us. So thanks, Paul and Ann, because that was hard work that I've never figured out how to do. So the two contractors are Keith Worley and Dave Root. They could stand up over there. You can look at their qualifications up there if you'd like. I'm not going to go through them all, but needless to say, both of them have very extensive forest service knowledge. They know a lot about this, and between the 2 of them, I think they've either created, advised on, implemented over 50 different CWPPs. So they've got a little expertise in this area. So I just, you may see them in the neighborhoods. I know they're a little scruffy looking, but we need them, so please don't shoot them if you see them on your property, okay? And with that, I'm all done. I'm out of here.
Thank you so much. All right, well, we're switching to the next PowerPoint. Yeah, thank you. Kevin's been great to work with. I want to just make a little announcement before we bring Jessica up that we have peak alerts over here sitting against the wall. Peak alerts, if you're not signed up, I highly encourage you to. I signed up a year ago, and I get notices on my phone whenever there's something to be aware of with regard to weather and fires and really any emergencies, and they are amazing. So it's super easy to give them your contact information. So all right, with that, Jessica.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jessica McIntyre. I work at Colorado Springs Fire Department in the Wildfire Preparedness Department. Okay, hopefully this works better. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, I was just introducing myself, and I'd also like to make special mention of some of the other staff from the fire department here today. We have our Deputy Fire Marshal, Chris Cooper, staff from Station 12, and a battalion chief here as well. So as mentioned tonight, there is a CWPP, or Community Wildfire Protection Plan, already in place for the city of Colorado Springs. So I'm just going to be briefing you all a little bit on what that looks like. So when you're all developing your own, you just have a little bit of a picture of what's going to be the end product for this. So our CWPP for the city is publicly available on our website. So if you're interested in reading it or taking a deeper dive into some of the stuff I'm going to brief on today, feel free to take a look at that. But the CWPP contains the following elements. So it has information about the history of fire in our area, primarily some of the catastrophic fires from the last 100 years. It talks about the city of Colorado Springs wildland-urban interface. So that's that area of heightened wildfire risk in our town. It talks about the goals and objectives for the CWPP, and then also the current conditions. So even though there is a wildland-urban interface, the risk throughout the WUI isn't the same. So it's not a uniform risk, and it talks about the different vegetation cover, the vegetation density that is throughout the WUI. We talk about not only our goals and objectives, what we're going to be doing, but also what we're doing to implement those strategies to mitigate that risk. And then finally, there's a section in the plan about planning and recovery for after the fire. Next slide. Okay. So basically the goals and objectives for this plan. So we're trying to understand what our risks are, identify those risks, create strategies on how we're going to mitigate them, and then implement them into place for the community. Next. And then next here we have just some information about implementation in the community. So many of you are already aware of some of these services that we offer. The first being this wildfire risk map. So this risk map, you can see in the picture, there's a picture of Woodmen Valley in there. What we do is on that risk map, we have each address or parcel broken down into the different types of risk. So there you can see the light green, there's some that are red. So this is publicly available for everyone to take a look at. So you can actually look at your address and figure out what your risks for wildfire are. Next, we also do project work throughout the community. So mostly in proximity to residential areas, but we have a team that does fuels management for open space areas. We do events like this where we'll do community outreach, where we attend, for example, a neighborhood meeting, a community meeting, and we'll just educate on home hardening and vegetation management. Next. As already mentioned, we have the neighborhood chipping program. So if you haven't participated in that, we recommend looking into it. When we do our community meetings, we're basically talking about that home hardening, vegetation management, and we're encouraging residents to share the responsibility, do that fuels mitigation work. And this is a way that you can get that slash out of your property. So basically, if you do that fuels work where you're cutting out some of the hazardous vegetation, you can register for the chipping program, and staff, our crews, will come by, haul, and chip that material away. But it's a very specific program. You need to be registered. Your piles need to be stacked properly. And we offer this throughout the Wild and Urban interface. And we offer it for Woodmen Valley too. Even though this community is outside of that WUI boundary, Woodmen Valley has been identified as a community that has a very large impact to Colorado Springs if there were a catastrophic fire. So we offer this service in your community as well. We also offer on-site consultation. So the information that we talk about at that community meeting, you might listen to it and think, okay, there's hazardous vegetation, but what does that look like for me? What does that look like for my property? So the on-site consultation is a great service to take advantage of, where staff from our office will come and work with you individually and help you not only prioritize mitigation on your property, but help identify things not only for the structure of your home, but for the vegetation around it. And then lastly on this slide, we have a cost share stipend program. So whereas with the neighborhood chipping program, that's a lot of work that you're doing yourself and you're cutting that material up and putting it out curbside for us to haul away. The stipend program is more for vegetation that you need assistance to mitigate. So you might hire a contractor, for example. And with the cost share stipend program, we do a dollar for dollar match up to $500 to offset the costs of some of the work when you're hiring a contractor, for example. Next. And another really big important thing with the CWPP is that it helps open up grant funding. So as mentioned, not only are you getting this strategic level plan for your CWPP, but this opens up more opportunity to get more funding into the community, and that helps supplement that neighborhood chipping program, those cost share stipends, and it gives us the opportunity to do more project work. And when we're doing the project work, it's not just a one-time thing. There is a whole model of maintenance and monitoring to see with the regeneration of some of that vegetation when we need to return and do some retreatment of some of those project areas. And finally, as mentioned before, when you're doing that vegetation management, it's really important to keep track of the hours. So that goes into the FireWise USA program. So that's run by the National Fire Protection Agency, and we help facilitate that for local communities so that you can become a FireWise certified community. In order to do that, you need to be doing that vegetation management, doing the home hardening, and then we keep track of all that information, and there's an annual recertification. So we help communities like Woodmen Valley get recertified every year for the FireWise USA program. Next. Okay, and so I'm just covering a very brief overview of what our section does. If you're interested in learning a little bit more, getting a deeper dive into wildfire mitigation, we have our town hall series. So we'll be having another meeting on June 25th at the Cheyenne Mountain Junior High School. So we encourage everyone that is looking to learn a little bit more about wildfire mitigation to attend that meeting. And finally, here is all of our contact information. So if you have any other questions that you'd like to ask us, not only will we be here for the booths in the cafeteria, but here's our contact information to get in touch with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Well done. All right, next we have the Air Force Academy, and we have 3 speakers. We're going to start off with Colonel Amy Glisson, commander of the 10th Air Base Wing. So, Amy.
All right, we'll see how I can do. Not a communications major. We'll see. First of all, hi and welcome everybody for being here tonight. As introduced, Amy Glisson. I'm the installation commander, garrison commander, if you speak Army, or base command out at the Air Force Academy. I've been in this seat for about a year. And I will tell you, one of the things that I was most nervous about when I took the command was fire. When I sat through all of my pre-command training, and we talk about emergency response, and we talk about, what we do as a Department of Defense and a Department of the Air Force, fire was the number one thing that I was concerned about. And so I just wanted to share that with you as a commander. I'm with you guys. And then by your show of force here today, and by the show of force that we have, not only from our community fire, but also from the Air Force Academy, this is a community effort. It really is. So thank you for taking some time to be here tonight to kind of listen. And I look forward to the Q&A. So, sir, thank you for being here tonight as well. I don't think I've had a chance to meet you, so I'm actually going to come over and shake your hand. That's just what I do. So, all right. So, as the commander of the Air Force Academy, I will tell you, fire resiliency is one of our top priorities. You sit here as a community and you have homes which are gorgeous and beautiful and nicely landscaped, and we have horses and we have roots that we have put down in this community. 1954, I think Kevin Bush mentioned that was the first year, right, of the fire department here. The Air Force Academy has been around since 1954 as well. And the mission of that academy grows every day. So it's not just the airstrip that's out there. It's not just the 4,000 cadets and the 1,000 that we just graduated last week. It is the medical support to the community that we provide. There are 218,000 beneficiaries here in the Colorado Springs area that we help support from a medical footing, and that happens on the Air Force Academy. There are 25,000 people that come to work and that live on that base every single day. And then I have 667 homes. That's 667 families that live on the Air Force Academy. And so when I talk about we're in this together with you guys, we are, because our community is your community, and fire knows no boundary, right? All right. So I want to thank also Lisa and the PPAGC team for partnering with us. We are neighbors, and having the opportunity to have this public meeting, I think, is incredibly important. So thanks so much to the PPAGC and for putting this together. As we're going to talk about some stuff in the military, we have a lot of plans, right? We talked about D-Day earlier. D-Day was an operational plan. And the military is really, really good about building plans. So we know exactly what to do, when to do, how to do. And so this community wildland protection plan that you guys are going to be working on over the course of the next little bit is fantastic. That plan will give you some guidelines on how to do, what to do, when to do. And so I'm very, very encouraged as we work through that, and Kevin and his team get to lead that. Another thing that we get to do in the military is that we do nothing alone, right? I have a phrase that I talk about all the time, and it's team of teams. And so I have 2 of my experts up here to talk about what we're going to do, what we do on the academy. But I hope that you also see the team of teams of the firefighters that are around this office, the El Paso County Sheriff's Department, right? And everybody here is working together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce 2 folks. First is going to be my forester, Joe Murphy. Also a little scruffy. It might be part of the job description. But Joe's going to come up and kind of talk about left of boom. So left of a fire, before a fire. What do we do in fuels management? What do we do with that vegetation? What do we do to our actual facilities and our infrastructure? So he's going to talk you through that. And then we're going to turn over to my fire chief, Ron Prettyman, and he's going to talk about what happens when there's actually a fire. And then we have a very unique thing to share with you towards the end of it. And as everybody's tracking, in February, we had the West Monument Creek fire. And so my number one fear about having a fire while in command came true. But I had an amazing team and an amazing team of teams for some of these guys on the back row that responded to that. So we're going to give you a little bit of an after action to share with you exactly how we fought that fire, to give you some understanding of maybe what kind of happens behind the scenes that you don't see. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe.
And thank you. Yeah, thank you, Colonel Glisson. Again, my name's Joe Murphy, and I'm the Forester and Wildfire Program Manager at the Air Force Academy. And I'm here today to review a little bit of our forest and fuels management projects that we are implementing on the Academy. And actually, I do have a big map of this on our booth, so please do feel free to come talk to me and we can discuss in detail what we're doing out here. But really, with any project that we look to implement on the Air Force Academy, we want to hit three main objectives here. And the first one is forest health. So, of course, what we're doing in the Air Force Academy is we have an extensive forest health monitoring program where we come out with everything from simple forest health field surveys where we're just walking through the woods to our more complex forest stand exams, taking more of that more complicated data. And we use that data in coordination with scientific research from the U.S. Forest Service, the State Forest Service, Society of American Foresters, and also the Rocky Mountain Research Station to help us devise and implement a series of programs and projects here on the Air Force Academy looking to improve that forest health. So really with that forest health, what we're looking to do is, of course, reduce competition, reduce the impacts of any forest pests that come through here, promote native species, and help to actually keep out those invasive species. And all the while doing this, we're creating a resilient forested landscape for the installation, especially in the face of climate change. Secondly, what we're looking at is that proper fuels management. So again, what we're saying fuels is generally any vegetation that can burn. So we're looking to really manipulate those fuels in a way that we know how it's going to act and really help us to knock down any sort of fire that might come our way. So those fuels management projects, we're actually in a fire dependent landscape. So our ecosystem needs fire to prosper. So excluding that fire for so long, it's just like putting more wood on a campfire. Essentially, at some point it's going to burn, and there's more and more fuel out there that's going to burn. So we're trying to reduce that fuel loading to keep that fire down, keep it on the ground, and keep it in a way we can manage that. And we also use these ecosystem-based management projects to actually help support our military programs as well. And just like Colonel Glisson was saying, we got a bunch of plans, and a bunch of them are available online too. Everything from our integrated natural resource management plan to our wildfire management plan to our annual operating procedure for wildfire there. And lastly, what we're looking at here is just aesthetics. We want to maintain aesthetics, remove all that dead and dying, and kind of turn the forest into a park per se. So again, all these objectives here, we're going to next look into what are we doing to implement those on the Air Force Academy and where are we managing those. So the first thing we're looking at here is actually installation protection. So what we're thinking there, is we don't want anything coming off or on the Air Force Academy. That includes fire, forest pests, or anything like that. So not only working to protect the installation, but we also want to do some work to protect our community as well. So if anything should happen, we're going to have defensible space surrounding the installation where we can actually come in and anchor off of that should any event happen. So again, here, we're actually going to do that by creating fire lines in spaces here, doing some fuels mitigation treatments and things like that. So looking to our east here, we have three really good fire lines, which include I-25, the railroad tracks, and the Santa Fe Trail, which acts for excellent anchor points for us. They actually run the length of the academy. Our next kind of area of severity is looking out our north side. So with the east and the north side, what we're mainly concerned with there is actually fire leaving the academy, because every significant wildfire we've had, and it's a little hard to see here, but these red shape files are our significant wildfires we've had since 2008. All of them from their point of origin has started and moved north or east or some kind of proportion in there. So again, that's where our primary wind directions are coming from. So we want to make sure that we're protecting our landowners here from anything leaving there. So on our north side here, we actually have a fire line that's 100 foot of treated vegetation to where if anything should happen again, we can defend that line. It's a defensible space for us. On our west side, it gets a lot more complicated because we have that high fuel loading. We have that really rugged terrain. We don't really have any fire lines like we did on the north or the east, and we have the the rugged national forest there. So of course, there's really not much they can do on their side because it's just too steep, too rugged, and we can't really get crews in there. So based on our, so here's the cadet area here, which is one of our very sensitive areas. So we started on this north side here, utilizing the work from our wildland support module. We got a couple folks back there working with our support module, and they do all of our fuels mitigation here on the academy here. So what we're trying to do here is build that defensible space, starting from the north and working down, and we'll do that with machines, tracked machines, or of course, a lot of these folks have to go in there by hand, hacking up these steep hills with chainsaws every day, cutting this material down, piling it for later burn operations. So our plan is we're building this defensible space in these sensitive areas, and we're now currently working our way south. So this is where our crews are working right now. And we're eventually, once we start working down here, we're going to wrap around the south end as well. So I'm currently working to get approvals to do a lot of that management in the future. So we're thinking probably 4 to 5 years maybe in the future. But again, we're building this defensible space, and of course, that was very helpful here as we had that West Monument Creek wildfire, which again was threatening our housing community. But as you can see, we've done quite a bit of work over there to secure that sensitive Douglas Valley housing. So then as we move down south here, we have our southern fire line. So again, that's just like our northern fire line. It's 100 feet of treated space that we can defend. And also, should anything happen, you can anchor off of this line as moving south to protect your community as well. So that's what we're working on too. So that's kind of our installation protection. Next, we're actually kind of looking at overstory thinnings. So with our overstory thinnings, the objective there is actually to change the structure of the canopy of these larger diameter trees. So this fire exclusion for years, and actually you can go back to, I'm sorry. Yeah, so the overstory thinnings, yeah. So these years of fire exclusion has actually produced a very unhealthy forest. It's way too overstocked, way too many trees per acre, a lot of competition, a lot of stunted growth. So we're trying to remove, through a very ordered prescription, actually remove select overstory trees to really restructure that forest based on some Rocky Mountain Research Station data that we've received. So, creating some groups and clumps and openings, and that's really going to help us prevent that spread, that crown fire spread from stand to stand. It's going to help us reduce those pests that are out on the forest because that's harder for them to move from stand to stand, and also reduce that competition. Next, we talked a little bit about our fuels mitigation. And again, as we're looking at the overstory thinnings, when we're kind of thinning from above, the fuels mitigation is looking from the ground to about 8 feet. So we call that thinning from below. So again, what we're trying to do is knock out those ground fuels and those ladder fuels. And the ladder fuels are what take the fire from the ground into the canopy is what we can't manage. So again, we're implementing a series of fuels mitigation treatments in some sensitive areas, especially these orange polygons here. And of course, terrain can really limit these operations like we talked about. What else we got? So yeah, our Air Force Wildland Fire Branch, actually we've got Jason and Joe back there. They're funded by, that's two of the folks on the crew. They're actually funded by the Air Force Wildland Fire Branch, and they complete treatments of anywhere from between 80 to 120 acres per year based on terrain and what we can accomplish there. So we're also collaborating with the U.S. Forest Service, the Colorado State Forest Service, Colorado Springs Utilities, and the Colorado Springs Fire Department for a lot of this fuels mitigation as well. And then lastly, what we're looking at here is prescribed fire. So again, like what we were saying, we need fire to be healthy in this landscape. So a lot of our fuels mitigation projects, we're trying to actually trying to mimic what historically would have happened in a fire. And that's kind of helpful, at least with the fuels mitigation going through, but it's not as necessarily helpful for our ecological and system management there. So prescribed fire, we might do some broadcast burns in the future. We've done some pile burning in the past, and actually that's what the debris from their hand piling operations is. We actually come out there and burn those piles in the winter when we have enough snow. Or actually, we also have a curtain burner, which is essentially a very large dumpster with a curtain of air and a blower on top. So every piece of material we throw in there gets completely destroyed with very little residual smoke coming out of there. So you can move to the next slide now. So here we can actually see some of the work that they've done. So this is actually one of our shaded fuel breaks. So we can see actually all this vegetation here has been removed and really that canopy has been brought up. So again, we can defend that area and a fire can sweep nicely through there. We can stop that flaming front from coming through and catch some of those spot fires. Our bottom two pictures here are actually what a properly thin ponderosa pine forest should look like. So we're trying to kind of implement this in a lot of our forested areas in the Air Force Academy. And we do have 13,000 forested acres on the Air Force Academy. And next slide, please. And next, our last slide here I'm going to talk about is defensible space. Because just like what every structure, every home, every area needs to establish, defensible space to ensure that you're surviving, your structure is surviving, your house is surviving. Here in Colorado, 90% of the homes that are destroyed are not from the flaming front that we see coming through. It's actually from sparks and embers getting into the homes, causing spot fires, getting into the roofs and burning, stuff like that. So, and actually what we're seeing is a lot of our spot fires, like from the Marshall fire, the fire they had, those spot fires could be anywhere from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 miles ahead of the flaming front of the fire. So of course, where we're sitting right now, we're about 2 miles away from the Forest Service. So this home hardening is really essential to save any structure. And that's something that we're working on in the Academy too. So we talked about building defensible space as an installation as a whole. We're also doing that for areas. We have quite a few areas, say our housing areas, the cadet area, our hospital, we're actually building defensible space for these areas. And then even for structures, sensitive structures, we're working to build that as well. So here we can see, this is actually from a Boulder fire, the fire up in Boulder a few years ago, and they've done extensive work to actually harden their homes. So we can see the entire forest around them is completely destroyed, but their home has been saved. And here's actually some good, it's a nice little diagram of what you should be doing to kind of harden your home there, what we're doing as well. Also, speaking of prescribed fire, the U.S. Forest Service is actually going to be coming through and looking at maybe doing a prescribed fire here in the next few weeks, maybe up at Mount Herman. So they'll be putting out some information there. So that'll be exciting. And that's all I have. And actually, we'll have Chief Prettyman coming up to speak a little bit about the response. And again, I've got a table and a booth over here, and I'd love to sit and speak with whoever's interested about our response and what we're doing to manage our fuels. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ron Prettyman, Fire Chief at the Air Force Academy. Thanks for coming out tonight. The good Joe Murphy gave you all the input on what we're doing on the Academy as far as mitigation goes, and it's my job to come out and tell you how we respond to wildland fires on the Academy and provide that support off the installation. The Academy Fire Department is a full-service all-hazard professional department. We have 68 folks on the department. 41 of those are civilian, DoD civilians. 27 are military that rotate in and out. We do a lot of training with those folks to get them ready, not only because they come equipped to do things like structural and aircraft, we have to get them spun up to do wildland firefighting. The daily staffing at the department is 19 to 24 personnel. And we realize that we do not have the staff or the equipment or the expertise all the time to handle every type of emergency on the Academy. Most of the time, most of our responses, we're able to go quickly, get there, mitigate them, and take care of business with the resources on hand. But when we don't have those resources available, we have mutual aid agreements. So you can see the long list of folks that we reach out to. About every 3 years, we renew those mutual aid agreements, and that's both ways. So we ask them to come help us, but then we're also on the board to go out and help them in the county. One of the things that we did about 10 years ago, just after the Waldo Canyon fire, is we switched out our dispatch agency to the El Paso County Dispatch. And I can tell you from that point forward, our interoperability with the county was completely turned around. We're on the same radio frequencies. We're dispatched by the same dispatch center that most of our mutual aid partners are dispatched by. So we're definitely connected with the county and how we can help out. And then also on the other side of that, getting help as quickly as possible when we have an incident on the Academy. As far as equipment goes, the Air Force Academy has on the wildland side has 2 Type 6 engines. You can see one of them out here in the parking lot. We have a Type 3 engine, which is a little bit bigger than a Type 6. It is a wildland vehicle, but it's more built for structure protection. We also have UTVs, a couple of UTVs with wildland skids on them, and those are really great for getting into remote and isolated areas where we have fire starts. We can get in there quickly, put the fire out, get equipment, water, and personnel in there as quickly as possible. As far as a typical wildland response on the Academy, we send 11 folks. So our 2 Type 6 engines with 4 personnel each. We send a rescue truck with 2 personnel, and then we send a chief officer. On the Academy, about 10 to 15 wildland fires a year. Most of them are about an acre or less. We do a really good job of getting there as quickly as possible. The great thing about the Academy is it sits on the Front Range, and I always like to say we have about 400,000 smoke detectors that'll immediately tell us when we have smoke in the air. And that's great for us because the sooner we find out about it, the sooner we can get responding and start mitigating that emergency. One of the things that was on the last slide is a mutual aid coordination system. That is a great process here in the county. There's several fire agencies that are involved in that. The Air Force Academy is heavily involved. We have mutual aid coordinators on the team. But what that is that's an immediate response for a large number of resources when we have a fire in the area. So there's a lot of county resources that have signed up to be on the board, and every couple weeks the names change out, but I'll tell you that the Air Force Academy is the secondary response on every week. So we also, as mutual aid coordinators, jump on about every other month, and we're on call for a whole week. So if there's any smoke in the air, we coordinate all those resources to go to wherever the fire's at. When we have a fire, our chief officer will arrive on scene. They'll determine right away whether we have the resources on scene to actually address the fire. If we don't, then we'll more than likely implement that mutual aid system. The first thing that incident commander will do is call for a strike team of Type 6 engines. A strike team is simply 5 of one type of resource. So in this case, it would be 5 Type 6 engines. And just to kind of give you an idea, we implemented this whole thing. Colonel Glisson referred back to February. On the 25th of February, you can go to the next slide. We had our West Monument Creek fire. So I've been at the Air Force Academy for 17 years. Like I said, most of our fires are about an acre, maybe up to 5 acres, and we're able to handle them pretty quickly. This one expanded out to 168 acres, so we were immediately over our head and we needed to go get help. So our incident commander got on scene the 25th, about 1300. They called us out. We got on scene about 3 minutes later. The incident commander immediately identified that we needed more help on this fire. So they called out for a strike team of engines. After a little bit of analysis of the fire, they determined that the erratic conditions of fire conditions, as well as it's a red flag. We were in a red flag. We had high winds. They decided to go ahead and call for another Type 6, another strike team of Type 6s. So within the first 30 minutes, we had 10 Type 6s inbound. About 45 minutes to an hour later, all of those resources were on the ground. We divided up our resources into 2 divisions, an Alpha and a Zulu. The Alpha was near the McCullough Water Treatment Plant, and the Zulu was east of there. The crews that arrived on scene on the 25th were mainly just doing defensive work, constructing lines around the fire. We're just trying to get our head around what we have to do and how we can control this fire. And their main aim was to kind of keep it at the size it was and not let it grow anymore. They did a lot of work during the day. That evening, we went into night ops. We had a lot of folks we had an engine from El Paso County Wildland Team, from the sheriff's office, and then the Air Force Academy. And our job that night was really just to patrol that line and then to make sure that we confine the fire to that area. In the morning, we were fortunate enough to get a lot of those resources back from all over the county. You name it, the fire departments from the county were there in force at 7:30. They divided up into the divisions, into the 2 divisions, and they went out and did reinforcing those lines, putting more control lines in. And then we were also very fortunate to get helicopters from Fort Carson. So 2 Chinooks and a Black Hawk, and that day they dropped 14,000 gallons of water. And now early on in this fire, we made the decision to put our housing areas on a pre-evacuation notice. And that was really just due out of an abundance of caution because we had close proximity, those housing areas were in close proximity to the fire. Plus, we wanted to make sure our residents were prepared and ready to go if we had some major changes in the fire condition. We determined at that time that we did not have any other threats, not only to the academy, but also off base. And I'll tell you that we had our EOC stood up during that time, and we were relaying information about every half hour to them on fire conditions. And about every 6 hours, they were relaying that information downtown to the Pikes Peak Regional OEM. Let's see. So, talking about evacuations. I know that's a big question, especially in this room. And neighborhood evacuations, everybody that's been here since Waldo Canyon Black Forest, it becomes a big, important point. When there's smoke in the air and there's a lot of activity on a fire, people are really interested in how do we have to evacuate and how are we going to get out? So I've been here for 17 years, and for about the last 12 years, we've had discussions about a fire break that's on the academy. It sits up on a ridge between the Air Force Academy and Woodmen Valley. And the question that has come up is making that an evacuation route that goes through the base and get out. And I'll tell you right now, just to clarify, that is not a road and it's not an evacuation route. It is a fire break, truly a fire break. So what we use that for is emergency response and really just to protect that south side of the Air Force Academy. But I definitely wanted to clarify that to you all tonight. I really want to thank you all for coming out, and I look forward to your questions during the question and answer period.
Before I turn over to Chris Gonzalez, I just want to add a personal tie to that. So the West Monument Creek fire was kind of coming up and over, and there was a particular ridge. And if the fire had made it to the top of that ridge, we had about 2 hours until that fire was going to come down that ridge. And I'll tell you, if I had the laser pointer, I could tell you, I think my house was the first one. Right. And so it is coming straight down. And so as we talk about fire and we talk about fire breaks and all of that, I mean, there's the north and the south and the east and the west, and those fire breaks protect in all cardinal directions. Right. So they stop smoke and not smoke, but they'll stop fire from moving. And so just a really important part to kind of clarify. So with that, I will turn it over to Chris. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Gonzalez. I'm the commander with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office in charge of law enforcement operations. I jokingly refer to that as the boutique units. If it's not law enforcement specific or investigations, it belongs to me. I am responsible for everything from these great wildland firefighters right here. They're looking very stoic in the back row because I'm pointing them out, to the SWAT team, K9, emergency, OEM, I do EOD, I even own chaplains and language services. Anything that's not normal falls into my shop. Now, I know a lot of you are up here wondering, why is there a cop up here talking to you about wildland fire? One, wildland fire is part of my responsibility. Two, who knows what the authority of the sheriff is regarding fire? Anybody? Our sheriff, your sheriff, Sheriff Joe Roybal, is by statute the fire warden of El Paso County, which means he is the highest ranking fire official in the county. He technically supersedes the fire districts and the municipalities. However, we have a wonderful relationship with all of the fire districts and municipalities, and we're not going to be stepping in anytime soon to take over. They are extraordinarily good at what we do, but statutorily, his responsibility is to manage and coordinate the suppression of wildfire in El Paso County. So when you think sheriff's office, remember that is one of our responsibilities. The other one we have to do is command aid, which is why we have dispatch for many of the agencies in the area. For those of you who did not know, with the exception of Colorado Springs Fire and Colorado Springs Police Department, El Paso County Sheriff's Office handles dispatch for every major emergency response group in the entire county. We have a very robust work, and so any of the fire districts, any of that, they come through us. The last part of it is, and why I'm here, is to discuss with you evacuations. So fire departments don't evacuate people. Fire departments tell us, the cops, where they need to have evacuated, and we take it from there. Because you know what they're doing? They're trying to fight fire. They don't need to waste their time trying to figure out how to get people out of neighborhoods. So I've been here for 21 years. I've worked on every major fire all the way back through Turkey Creek #1, Waldo Canyon, Black Forest, 117, you just name it. I've been somewhere involved in the evacuations for every single one of those. So that's why I'm here talking to you about this. Evacuations are very near and dear. I almost got burnt to a crisp in one. I actually had almost lost a couple of deputies in one, the 117 fire, where they got overrun by fire while trying to accomplish some evacuations. And so, again, this topic is very near and dear to my heart. So what is an evacuation? We do it in natural disasters. We do it in man-made hazards. Man-made hazard could be a chemical spill, hazardous materials. Anybody know what the most dangerous cargo that's taken through El Paso County on a regular basis is? Huh? Say it out loud. Chlorine gas by rail. We have nuclear material roll through here all the time, but it's heavily protected and well contained. Chlorine gas is probably the most dangerous things we have roll through here on a regular basis. So I'm not just talking wildfire. We do evacuations for many other things. Does anybody know that we had an arsenic spill? Or was it cyanide? It was something really poisonous up in Monument a few years ago. Yeah, we had a slow drip out of a container on a rail car that was contaminating the air in Monument. So we can do evacuations for many things, and I'm here to talk to you about that. The other thing we do evacuations for is law enforcement activity, criminal activity. Who remembers Planned Parenthood? Yeah, good, we got some. That was one of the calls that every agency in the entire region went to. All right, so next slide, please. All right. How do we notify you? This is the most important part of this entire talk. Raise your hand in the audience if you are a member or signed up for Peak Alerts. Okay, now for those of you who did not raise your hand, shame on you. And I say that with humor. The reason I say that, first, Peak Alerts right here, Ben Bills with Active 911 Authority is helping us today with that. That is the mechanism, the one and only mechanism we use to get in touch with you in a mass evacuation basis. Okay? We buy phone lists. They're not accurate. We pay money to figure out, where you last registered your phone through certain vendors. Not always accurate. You signing up for Peak Alerts is the most important thing you can do to allow us to communicate with you what's going on. So before you leave here today, and you didn't raise your hand, please go see those people over there and get yourself signed up for Peak Alerts, because what that does, it doesn't matter which agency you go through. If you're CSPD, if you're El Paso County, it goes through a central hub and it notifies through, we use a reverse 911 product called Everbridge. Reverse 911 is actually a brand name, so we're not allowed to say reverse 911 without paying them $1. But we use Everbridge, but when we send out these notices, we send it through Everbridge. The only way to get it is through Peak Alerts. That's the only way to get on it accurately. I mean, like I said, we do mailing lists, but that's how you do it. All right. How else do we do it during evacuation? We will send out an Everbridge, and it will tell you whether it's a pre-evac notice, an evac notice, whether it's a shelter-in-place notice. It will give you all the information that's deemed necessary by incident command on what your next step should be. And I'm going to go through those here in a moment. You will also, and this goes for not just El Paso County, this goes for CSPD, we will come and knock on your door. My big job is I'm going to get every single cop I can get my hands on. And when something like a fire in your neighborhood is happening, they come out of the woodwork. I can get a lot of them really fast. We are going to go to every single door in your neighborhood and knock on it to elicit a response from the people inside. We're going to tell you what's going on, what we need you to do, and how you need to accomplish it. If you're not there, we're going to make note of it so we can go back and try again. If you are there, we're going to make note of it. If you are there and leave, we're going to make note of it because we need to know all this information in the long run. We will send a first round of knocks to your door. We will send Everbridge. We will send additional Everbridges. We will probably also send a second group out to check on everybody's door to figure out whether or not you are still there or you've left. Now, you won't get the knock on the door for a pre-evac, and I'm going to talk about what that means. You will get a knock on your door if it's an evac notice. All right. And the last way we're going to do it is loudspeakers. We'll also send a vehicle with a PA system through your neighborhood saying what the issue is at that moment. And that's if we have already done a couple of sweeps through, this is just like a final closer to make sure everybody gets the information. All right, next slide, please. All right, are evacuations mandatory? Anybody? Anybody? No, they're not. We might call them mandatory evacuations. I cannot tell you to leave your property, but I'm gonna, you're like, it's mandatory. It's not mandatory, but I'm gonna tell you this. If Incident Command, Unified Command in charge of this fire sends out an order for mandatory evacuations for your residents, it's really, really, really important. And it's really, really, really serious because if you stay there, we think you might die. And so when you think, I'm gonna wait it out, we hope you do well in that process. The reason we come to your house is because we think you might perish in the fire, okay? You can stay there if you want. I can't make you leave. But at this point, that chief right there, or whoever the incident commander is, has talked to the cop standing right next to him, and we said if we don't tell them to get out, they might actually perish in this fire. And I say that because I've actually had on 2 different fires I worked on, people die in the fires. In addition, I had an experience where I was out on 117, and for those of you who don't know about that one, it's down in Hanover. It was a wildfire fueled by about 80-mile-an-hour winds and was traveling about 35 miles an hour. So if you think about driving down the road, that's the speed of the fire moving next to you. I actually went up to a guy and said, hey, it's time to go. And he was standing there with a hose trying to wet his house down so it wouldn't catch on fire. He's like, no, I'm going to stay here and protect it. And I pulled him a little bit to the side so he could see the entire back of his house is already engulfed in flames. I was like, say, bud, it's time to go. And threw him in my car and we left. When we tell you to evacuate mandatory, it's because we are direly worried about your safety. We're not going to issue a mandatory evacuation order if it's just kinda. That's the pre-evac. If we send the full evac, it's because we know you're in danger. Okay. All right. Let's talk about pre-evac versus mandatory. Pre-evac, actually, it's better in the next slide. So go ahead and go to the next one. Oh, thank you. Wow, look at that. All right, pre-evacs. It might be several hours to several days before you have to evac. Waldo Canyon, for those of you who remember that one, that's actually started in Waldo Canyon. The initial wind reports, we had no inkling that it would cross over it would crest the ridgeline and go down into Mountain Shadows. We actually thought it was going to run up the backside, possibly cross into the Air Force Academy territory and just stay on the pike. It was a surprise to everybody when it started pushing east and went over the ridgeline. So we did pre-evacs for a good chunk of Mountain Shadows, so a lot of people were on pre-evac orders in those areas. Same thing for Black Forest, same thing for 117, Turkey Creek. We do pre-evacs if we say, yeah, we need to worry about this area. And so we'll send that out. You might have a couple of hours, you might have a couple of days, but what that means is start packing up your valuables, packing up your heirlooms, packing up your dogs, your cats, your gerbil, your boa constrictor, whatever animal you have at your house. But this is the time and opportunity for you to take an assessment of what you need to take with you and prepare for it. Mandatory, that's time is of the essence. When we send a mandatory, it's time to pack and go. And I'm sorry, I can grab your wallet, grab the cat, and get in your car and drive. The lives we lost in Black Forest and Waldo Canyon, they were on mandatory evacuation orders, and they delayed, and it turned out tragically. When we issue a mandatory evacuation order, there is no time to dilly-dally. There is time to pack your stuff and go. And I'm going to have a very blunt talk with you about this. I love my dog. His name is Gunner. He's a 105-pound German or a Rottweiler. He's an amazing dog, dumb as a box of rocks, but I love him to death. I would never risk any of your lives, nor mine, nor any of my people's to save that dog, and I love him. I'm going to say the same for you. Animals are property. Y'all are much more important to me. Everybody here in this room is more important to me than a horse, than a dog, than a cat, than your boa constrictor, than your whatever pet you have. If you do not have time to take your animals, sorry for your loss, but it's time to go. You are much more important. I've had people run blockades to go get their horses. Run blockades to go save their horses. And I know there's a few properties out here in Thunderbird where they're horse properties. Cut your fence, give them a good smack on the rump, and hope for the best. But if it's a mandatory evacuation, it's not time to take stock of what you do and do need to go. You just need to go. All right? Does everybody understand that? It sounds brutal to some people because they love their dogs more than they love some of their family members. But I'll tell you, I love everybody in this room more than I love my dog. I gladly sacrifice my Rottweiler for any person in this room. It's because y'all are more important. Everybody understand that? Okay. Because people ask, they don't understand it. All right, now here's the most critical thing, and I know that the fire chief talked about this a little bit. What is your evacuation route in this neighborhood? What'd you say? We don't know. I don't know. It depends on where the fire is. It depends on where the fire is going. I will tell you this, they talked about a little bit, that Air Force Academy route that people talk about, that is not a viable evacuation route. It just isn't. What type of car do you drive? Yeah. You? No. Gentleman behind you. Mercedes. Sedan? Sedan? Just like the little Nike shoe looking one? Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. What's your ground clearance on it? Your ground clearance? Yeah. Yeah. What about the tires? What type of tires do you have on it? Okay. Yeah, but do you know the tire type you have in your car? Tires. So what the point I'm getting to is I have no guarantee that your vehicle can get down that fire break without breaking down, and now I have an initial person to rescue. So when we do evacuation routes, Unified Command talks to each other, and we figure out the most viable route to push the most people out of the area in the most timely fashion. And we have modeling. I could tell you that usually you can get about 1,000 cars through an intersection in about an hour. And that includes, I'm gonna have to dispatch cops to every intersection that's starting to back up and clog to make sure that you can get through freely. I cannot use that fire break. It's just not viable for me. But I'm gonna tell you, it is gonna be Woodmen, because it's just Woodmen. But I don't know which way. I just don't. And so Unified Command's gonna determine the evacuation route, and we are going to base that, and I'm gonna send cops to block traffic, route traffic, and allow people to move freely out our X-flow while we are pushing emergency services vehicles in the other direction. So to everybody, these routes we actually talk about, we have modeling for them. We know how many cars can go through each of these intersections, and we plan for that. And so when you get this evacuation route through your Everbridge, sign up with peak alerts. Hold up sign, sign up with peak alerts. When you get that route, it is very much thought through, planned for, mapped. We will have cops there to help usher you in the right direction. We will have emergency services there in case somebody has an accident. If we have a medical issue, this is all part of the evacuation plan that we put together. And so please understand, when we say southbound on Woodmen, we are prepping for every single resident to be able to outflow that so I can push all the emergency vehicles in the other way. Because I'm going to shut down every lane of traffic and send it all out the direction I want it to go. So please understand, I know there's been some discussion on that gate. I and him talking together are never going to put that gate into play because we can't control it. I can control Woodmen. I can control Woodmen where it hits rock ribbon. I can control Woodmen at the top side where it goes down that long hill because I have the resources. I can't get people to the backside. So please, I know it's something y'all have been discussing. Everbridge will tell you where the evacuation route is. We work with PPR OEM to plan these evacuation routes. We have modeling software. We do all these really cool things. We exercise it. We plan for it. Just when you get the call, we'll tell you which way to go. I don't know which way it's going to be yet because I don't have the data on where the fire is going to be or which way it's headed. Mostly it heads east or north, but that's not a guarantee. It depends. All right, next slide, please. All right, here's the other thing. When can you return? Not till we say you can. So it's kind of, you don't have to leave if we tell you to, but once you leave, you can't come back till we tell you to. And I know that sounds kind of crappy, but there's a reason for that because we will have hundreds, if not thousands, of firefighters, law enforcement, medical personnel working in these areas, and we are counting on the fact that there's limited traffic flow through these areas. So our goal when we evacuate is to, one, get you out of the danger area, and two, to protect all of our first responders that are focused on fighting fire or providing medical aid and not on dodging the Mercedes that's working its way out from their 7-acre property. So we will restrict your movement back in. Now, here's the good news. If I clean you out of your neighborhood for an evac, I'm going to be putting cops back in your neighborhood to protect your valuables. We're going to cut off traffic control points so nobody can go back in. I'm going to put patrol out there so they can go drive around 24 hours a day, 7 days a week till you're allowed back in to protect your properties. We are going to do everything necessary to ensure that you should be worry-free while you're away from your house. Now, we will occasionally let people go back in there. Utilities is a huge one. To get power back up and running, to get gas that's been turned off. If you have gas service in Thunderbirds, I'm not sure if y'all do tanks or lines. We will occasionally escort media in so they can take their pictures. And then very, very rarely, we will escort residents in so they can reclaim valuables, occasionally get prescription drugs that they cannot get readily filled from their pharmacy, things like that. But that's very rare because I've actually taken people to their house and they went, you let me back in. And I can't kick them out anymore because I let them back into their house. So that's pretty rare. But we always allow, the first responders are in there. We'll let utilities in there. And then occasionally we'll take media up in there so they can get their pictures. But I will tell you, we vet that quite a bit. Because the last thing I want is for one of you to see your house burnt down on the news without me telling you first. So media is pretty limited. All right, here's the key thing, is who gets to choose when you go back in? It says it up there, so you're kind of cheating if you're looking. So it's that guy. I'm just using him as an example because he's the chief. And it's me. It is incident command. It is the command group will decide when you get let back in. We will let you back in the second it's safe, the second the utilities are reset, the second the living back in your house is viable. And then at that point, we'll start doing limited escorts to get people back to their homes because we don't want just everybody flowing back in at once. We're going to do, hey, this particular street's now allowed to go back to their home, this particular street. And guess how we tell everybody that they're allowed to go back? Everbridge. And how do you get Everbridge? Peak alerts, yay! So we also do the woman back there with the really amazing Smokey the Bear hat. She's our social media PIO, all that stuff. We will do an extraordinary social media campaign. I guarantee you, you will tweet, Insta, Snap, book every piece of information. So you will be getting it via social media as well, but our personal notice will be to you through peak alerts via Everbridge. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. I hope I was able to answer some questions or some thoughts. I'm giving this to Lisa.